Hi everyone, Dave here at East Rosebud Fly and Tackle in beautiful Billings, Montana. Today we're going to tie a parachute Adams. I'm going to introduce you to a different material for the post. Now traditionally I like to use things like McFly-Lon, a polypropylene post. It's easy to work with. Today we're going to use a different material. This idea came from a book that A.K. Best, the noted fly tyer and fly designer out of Boulder, Colorado, came up with. It's in his book called Fly Tying with A.K. The thing I like about A.K. is a problem solver. He thinks about materials and different ways that you can use them. In his quest to find a replacement material for one, he came up with a material and another idea. And these are turkey feathers. There are two different types and they're often mislabeled. There is the turkey flat, which is a very long feather, 5 or 6 inches long. And you can see that the tips, the web doesn't quite come up to the tips, versus a T-base feather. The T-base feather comes from the neck and the chest of the turkey. You can see it's much shorter than the flat, and the web comes all the way up to the tips. And this is what we want. And like I say, I've seen packages that were marked one or the other. Sometimes they're a combination of feathers, sometimes they're mismarked. So we're going to use this to make our post. The first thing we're going to do, I'm just using a 1X long dry fly hook. This happens to be a size 16. I'm using 70 denier UTC thread, but any 8/0 or 70 denier thread will work. Start at about the 75% point, wrap it back a little bit, and stop back there. Now the turkey T-base feather is really very easy to use. What we're going to do is we're going to measure about hook shank length, and we're going to clip out the tip of the feather so that we don't have that stem in there. Now don't peel off these lower fibers, because as you'll see when I'm done, you can tie additional flies, from this same feather. We're not going to use all of it. Since the Adams traditionally is tied with both a grizzly and a brown hackle, I'm going to make my post a little thicker, a little longer than hook shank length, because I want that extra material and that extra substance there to wrap those two hackles. So we're going to combine this V part. We want to make sure that none of that hackle stem is within the feather part that we're going to use. And we're going to measure it. I'm going to measure it about hook length long from the end of the bend to the eye. I'm going to place it at that 75% point, bring it to your side, make one soft wrap, then make another wrap immediately in front of it. And this wrap, the thread torque will bring this material up on top. And then make a third wrap behind and another couple of wraps behind that. Make sure that they're tight. Trim this off at an angle so that we can get our abdomen to merge with it. And like I said, all you have to do now is clip this tip out and you've got materials for another fly or two. So we'll go ahead and wrap over the butts of this. Make sure we've got it down securely. Now we're going to come right up to our front wrap. Keep your thread short. I like to twist it, cord it up, make it strong and thin. Then we're going to lift our bunch of turkey T-base feathers straight up, and just like with any posting, we're going to make some firm wraps, build a dam right in front of this post. It could take as many as a dozen wraps. That's okay. What's important is that you stand this up straight now. Alright, now we're going to post this bunch of feathers counterclockwise. We're going to take a wrap right around the base, pull it tight. Another wrap right on top of that. And again, we want to pull these wraps tight to really condense this bunch of fibers. I'm going to go ahead and continue to post up. I say we're going to be tying in 2 hackles, so we need the room to tie in and to wrap. I like to make my post area of thread about the same height as the distance from the base of the post to behind the hook eye. That seems to be about a pretty good distance, and then wrap back down. Keep your thread wraps smooth. That will make your hackle wrap much easier. All the way down, one turn around to return our thread back to the correct direction. We'll go ahead and wrap to behind the eye and then back as a thread base. Now, like I said earlier, traditionally an Adams is tied with a brown and a grizzly hackle. The problem with that is a dark brown hackle can overshadow the grizzly to such an extent that you can't even see the grizzly. So I prefer to use a barred dark ginger feather instead of brown. It doesn't overpower the grizzly. You can still see that coming through there. Another option is I have a variant hackle, which is a brown grizzly combined. And with this hackle, I can use a single feather, and I can make a fly that's really hard to see the difference between that and what we're going to make here. And what we are going to make, and I should have shown this first, this is the parachute Adams that we're going to make with the two different hackles. So we're going to get the bases of our brown, our barred dark ginger and our grizzly. I like to have the brown hackle against the post first, since I'm going to be wrapping that first. Simply overlap them, and then we're going to pull off enough fibers to give us the length not only to tie in, but we want to have bare hackle up the post, and we want to have bare hackle for our first wrap. That will keep our first wrap of hackle from flaring. You must tie these with the shiny side, the convex side, facing you. We'll get our tips even. Hold them on your side of the hook with the shiny side facing you. Make sure you have enough length for our purposes. I like to try to catch it on my side of the hook. We're going to wrap forward over the stems. As we wrap back, we're going to lift these feathers straight up and make a couple of oblique wraps, tapered wraps, to really force these feathers against the post. The inside of these feathers must face the post as we post them, because when we wrap the hackle, we're going to bend them over backwards and wrap it so that the hackle tips face up, and you'll see the advantage of that, particularly when we whip finish. So we'll hold our feathers up, and we're going to post just like we did before, only this time we're going to keep our hackles oriented the way we want them. And again, smooth thread wraps up the post to the top, and then back down. When you get to the bottom, another thread wrap in front to lock that in, and then we're going to go to the rear now and tie in our tail. There's a variety of materials you can use for the tail. The Adams moose body hair is traditional. I like to use the CDL hackle fibers. They're very easy to work with. They're basically feathers that are nothing but spade fibers. They come in a variety of different colors, and a beautiful effect. So we're going to even the tips on a clump of them. We're going to measure them to be hook shank length. Alright, the same as before. Measure your point, hold it, hold the material on your side of the hook. One loose wrap, and then the second wrap in front of it pulls that material up on top of the hook where you want it. We're going to wrap up to where we cut off the T-base feathers and clip our butts. Now normally I like to use a turkey or a goose biot for the body of my dry flies. I think it's more durable. I think it looks nicer. We're going to go ahead and use dubbing. We're going to stop our thread a wrap or two short of the bend of the hook. We're going to dub some thread. Here is just dry fly, Adams dry fly dubbing. There's a lot of different brands out there you can use. We want to keep this extremely thin. We're just basically covering the thread. And the reason that I've stayed back from the bend is because it's almost impossible to dub tightly and dub right up to the hook. So we're going to wrap our bare thread back and have our dubbing start right where we want it. Alright, we'll wrap back, one wrap, two wraps, and now our dubbing starts right at the base of the tail. And we want to dub a nice tapered body. It's easiest to do that when you keep your dubbing thin. You have much more control over it that way. Add dubbing as you need it. Continue to dub up, and then we're going to make a couple of X wraps to give it a bit of a thorax on a mayfly. The legs, the wings, all attached at the thorax, so it's a pretty bulky area. Okay, come in front. Now it's important that you have about an inch or so of dubbing left on your thread. You'll see why after we tie in the hackles. That way we won't end up with bare thread wrapped over our dubbed portion. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our brown hackle. Now, what I like to do is I try to make more wraps of grizzly than I do with brown. Even when I'm using the barred dark ginger, make one wrap near the top, then I'm going to space a wrap farther down, make room for the grizzly, and then a third wrap down here. Now, to hold this hackle until I'm ready to tie both of them off, just attach some hackle pliers that have a little weight to them. It'll keep that hackle where you want it. And then we'll take our grizzly, wrap one over the top, we'll wrap one in between the brown, another one on the bottom. Now we have both hackles. They need to be hanging down on your side of the hook because we're going to trap them against the post with our thread. Bring your thread straight up, parallel with the hook shank at the bottom of the hackle. One, two, third wrap, two wraps behind the eye. The second wrap is in case I mishandle the whip finish, so that's an insurance wrap. Now if you look at these fibers, you'll see how they're pointing up like an upside down umbrella. This makes it very easy to whip finish. If they were the other way pointing down, every one of these fibers would want to trap in your whip finish. So as long as you make your whip finish and make the wraps slowly and give those hackles time to kick out of the way. I have a couple of trapped ones and I'll show you how to fix that. Before you pull your whip finish knot tight, simply get your scissors in there and just lift those hackles away from the eye. Go ahead and tighten your whip finish. You notice that I didn't cut my hackles off. I waited until I had it whip finished. That way, if I mishandled the whip finish, I'd still have my hackles in case I had to rewrap. Get your scissors tips in there close. Cut off your hackle ends. And then finally, I like to use head cement that I keep especially thin. And we're going to put a drop right here at the top of the post. This will not stick to the hackle. It soaks into the post. And then just a little dab for the thread head. There you go. A very acceptable parachute Adams. Very easy to tie, very economical. So if you haven't used a turkey tea-based feather before, give it a try. They are available in different dyed colors, and I think you'll like the effect. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to contact us, and thanks for joining in. See you next time.